Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to the showdown between the Beastmen led by the Chaos Cow and the High Elves who are going to be led by Alariel the Radiant. So without further ado, let's jump right into this match and have some fun. So here in my front line, I do have a combination of the Gore Herds with shields, which I feel like are pretty good in this matchup. So number one, they do of course have shields, as I mentioned before, which is going to make them somewhat durable against skirmishing from Illyrian Reavers, Archers. I mean, obviously, as you guys know, the High Elves do have a ton of Archer units, so I feel like having the shields on these guys definitely is not a bad investment. And they have okay combat stats. 31, 35, and 30 means they can put up a pretty good fight against Spearmen, if not win the fight. So yeah, pretty happy with how they performed in the past. So we're going to be trying them today. We do also have the Blackhorns Ravagers, which are the RORs. And yeah, these guys are pretty beast mode. 47 melee defense and 36 melee attack is definitely no joke. They have perfect vigor. They're not going to get tired, just a solid unit. But of course, the High Elves do have armor. They have White Lions, they do have Sword Masters of Hoeth, they have things like that, and sometimes you will see them, so I feel like you need a couple groups of Vestigors. So in total, we do have two groups of Vestigors, I think, one here and one over here as well. And even against like Spearmen and lower tier troops, the Vestigors with their huge charge bonus should be able to run them over, so I also feel like they're a pretty sound pick. For our caster, we do have a Deathcaster, Spirit Leech, and the Fate of Buna. Definitely pretty necessary against, like, you can use Shadows as well. Shadows, Melkoth is really good against Dragon Princes, but the Fate of Buna is very, very good against Dragon Princes and Heavy Cav, which you do often see in this matchup. So I felt like that would be a safe pick. We got Morkir the Shadowgate for our Lord, two groups of the Ungor Raiders just to provide Overwatch and give us some utility. A couple groups of Spears in the back protecting them. I think, is it just one group? Yeah, maybe just one group of Spears. So going to be a little bit dicey here. We do have two groups of Centaurs with Great Weapons, or actually just one group with a group of Chaos Warhounds on their sides. They're going to be teaming up. The Poison breaks the charge, and then you follow up with the Great Weapons, but they're mainly a defensive unit to protect my three groups of Centaurs with throwing axes. So these guys, much like they're very good against Bretonnia, they can outrun Heavy Cav and they have AP, they can kite. These guys are MVPs. I'm telling you, Centaurs with throwing axes are just absolute pimps. We're going to be trying that out for my opponent. He's got Alariel the Radiant on top her Mighty Pigeon up here, so she's going to be dropping some heals. And whenever you see her, just expect Dragon Prince, because it's so cost effective to just use her Star of Avalorn on a group of Dragon Princes. The healing is insane. So my opponent, two Reavers here. Looks like one of them is going to be the Herald to the Wind. I think he has 4 Dragon Princes in total, so he's just going balls deep. He's got 2 here, and then I think there's another 2 somewhere around here. Yeah, he does have the Fireborn, and these guys melt like a lot of Beastmen troops. So if you see them against like Minotaurs or Centaurs, they're just going to run them over so bad. I mean, look at that. 110 armor, 110 leadership. These guys are reared and ready to go. So Fate of Buna is definitely going to be hitting them. Granted, they can be healed through it. Dragon Princes and a whole back line of Spearmen. So it's going to be a wild game, guys. So without further ado, let's get the show on the road. So right now, the Pigeon Lady's just kind of flying over. She did scout me out in the forest there a little bit, so I figured, hey, I'm just going to come and try and throw some axes at her, get some free damage. But the axes, not so good against targets that are flying and moving. You can see their Arc of Fire is struggling a little bit, but his Reaver is getting some pretty good skirmishing. I actually didn't know where his army was in terms of his Spearmen, so it's going to get a little bit dicey. You can see these Dragon Princes are hidden here, so right now, the only knowledge I have of what's going on is going to be these Heralds here. And it looks like he does use an Arcane Enforging on my caster, which is a pretty good choice. I assume he'll be timing that with an initial engagement, because that makes it so I can't cast a Spirit Leech or Fate of Buna for like 45 seconds, which is brutal. But these Dragon Princes are kind of sweeping through the forest here, and for the first time in the battle, I do see them, so you can see that my Centaurs are chasing them, trying to get some throwing axes on those guys, some armor piercing to drag them down. But it's going to be a huge charge coming in from these guys. 4 Dragon Princes is definitely nothing to sneeze at. So right now, Centaurs just kind of charging forward, trying to get some freebies. The Spearmen in the back are screening, but it looks like he's going to be trying to get value with his Cav. He gets a massive charge with his Dragon Princes coming through the swamp. My infantry just getting absolutely dumpstered here. So it's going to be rough for my front line. I do countercharge with the Centaurs with Great Weapons, because they're not really going to take the charge, considering the Dragon Prince is committed. The Vestigors countercharging as well, but a few of these guys are definitely going to get like pinballed and just shot into another dimension. Dragon Princes obviously having the charge advantage there. So a massive charge coming in, another one coming in as well. So it's just going to be sheer brutality. Probably going to be using the Earthbloods and the Heart of Avalorn. So he gets into my my Cav here, I think? No, or hurts. So my throwing axes are basically just going to sit here and kind of, try their best to do damage. Fate of Buna going down, but he does have an Earthblood already, so it's really not going to do as much as it normally would. Very good stuff from my opponent there. And we pretty much just have a fight on our hands. So he's going for sustained combat here. And honestly, I feel like even all these troops, like I have Vestigors here, I don't think they're going to be able to get through these Dragon Princes very effectively. You can see that my Gore Herds in the front getting just dumped, just pound-towned. The Star of Avalorn going down, and look at that fat healing, just basically counteracting all the damage they're taking, plus healing them even more. Our Raiders in the back are just shitting, oh god, just sitting in with Overwatch here. Oh man, that's so good. But anyways, they're just sitting right here and shooting at these Fireborn. Oh man, I gotta get my composure real quick. Oh boy. Heralds of the Wind charging in, getting a pretty good rear charge right there on the Centaurs. It's a little bit tough for those guys. They're getting collapsed, so because Reavers can probably honestly trade evenly with Centaurs in melee, so my whole front line's getting melted. Vestigors are putting a dent in these guys, doing okay, but the Dragon Prince front line is just brutal. This one group of Vestigors, though, is having a pretty good time. A little bit bunched up, like unnaturally so. I'm not sure how that happened. little bit some funny business going on. But it looks like Alariel's getting an overcasted Earthblood over here on all of these Skirmisher Cav, but my Centaurs with throwing axes are still sitting in there and doing okay damage. Let's go ahead and take inventory of what's happened so far. So here, the Reavers have done an okay job. They're pulling back. They got their charge and basically dealt with my Hounds and Centaurs. My infantry, I have some Chaos Spawn from Morkar, some Goreherds still fighting. Vestigor's doing a really good job. But for the most part, my army's looking pretty tattered. Balance is still dead even, though. So as far as his Dragon Princes go, one group's pretty beat up. I'm pretty sure the group I faded unit is pretty much offline, I think, because I was dumping everything. My Raiders, my throwing axes, just every blast tool I had into those guys trying to bring them down. But he still has a couple groups of somewhat healthy Dragon Princes. These two are pretty much full health. This one's tattered, but the Fireborn are pretty much offline. So it's going to be a little bit tough once my Chaos Spawn go. Morkar a little bit overextended in here. You can see the Pigeon is in there fighting. She's got her Pimp Staff up, and it's looking a little bit dicey. Morkar's fighting, getting some decent attacks on Alariel. My Raiders are repositioning. The throwing axes, though, have proven to be MVP so far, but it's a little bit scary because my opponent could just charge my throwing axes, and it looks like I think he ends up doing that in a moment. Yeah, it looks like they're going to be sweeping out here to deal with my throwing axes, so they're coming in. It's going to be a little bit tough, taking a nice charge, and the Centaurs with throwing axes can put up a fight, but Reavers are just really, really good in melee. These Heralds of the Wind are rocking like 40+ melee defense, 30+ melee attack. They are no joke. So I pull back here. I turn my Raiders now, and the Raiders are going to be very good for this. I get my Deathcaster to intercept using his mass to pin these guys down. Now the Raiders are going to be shooting in. So the Raiders just going to be pouring fire into the Heralds, and this is going to be an extremely cost-effective trade. Throwing axes still just kind of peppering into those Dragon Princes, wearing them down slowly. Another Faded Buna going off, but Earthblood again counteracting a lot of the damage. So it's just a grindy fight. And he has a ton of Spearmen left, so it's going to be really tough. In the back, there are some Goreherds with shields. You can see 59 models here are going to be working their way through these Spearmen, but I don't know. Yeah, I wonder. That's going to be a close one. I feel like the Spearmen might end up edging that one out, but who knows. Anyways, Spearmen in the back are coming up from the auxiliary. I was using them in the back to kind of just defend, but there was no backline pressure, so I decided just to pull them in because Morkar's pretty much surrounded now. He's just being prison shanked from all angles. He does have a couple of Vestigors that are just like the Game of Thrones scene where they're just fully surrounded, being speared down. But the Pigeon, thankfully the Pigeon isn't like a crazy combatant, and Morkar can heal through that spear DPS. So realizing it was a little bit of a bad surround, I pull the Goreherds from this engagement. I collapse here. I get the spears in there, and a lot of the Goreherds are coming back in with a nice charge bonus, hopefully being able to do some damage to these Spearmen. So just an absolutely wild back and forth fight. Bounce of Power is actually maybe a little bit in my favor, but that could easily change at any moment. The Dragon Prince is charging in again. He's trying to collapse my formation. My throwing axes are doing good, still continuing to drag down the Dragon Princes, and my Deathcaster as well, getting a rear charge. He's got that hot Spirit Leech, so the Spirit Leech. Honestly, though, if you cast like 2 Faded Bunas, you're not going to be able to cast much else in the game. Very, very good play from my opponent. He kind of blobs up, which I was like, why is he doing that? But then all of a sudden, massive healing is going to put these Princes at their cap. It's going to heal up the Heralds, these Spears. It's getting some pretty good value. Granted, I think he might have netted a little bit more here, but these Dragon Princes are all looking pretty tattered. He does have 26 here. He has 12 here. Over here, he has another 22, and the Fireborn pretty much just got decimated. I dumped so much firepower into those guys. Raiders are proving to be extremely useful this game. Even though it's just like Withering Fire, they're really tearing apart these Heralds. And are one of the main reasons why my opponent's Skirmisher Cav are taking a lot of damage. But it's getting a little bit ugly, guys. My Deathcaster takes a beating right there, unfortunately. I think he was fighting the Spears for a little bit too long. Morkar is still fully surrounded. Thankfully, his regeneration is keeping him alive, but he's being attacked by Dragon Princes, all kinds of stuff. The Vestigors have come back in. They're chipping away at the edge of this Heil formation, trying to get into the Cookie Jar, but the Cookie Jar is pretty tightly sealed. I'm not sure if we're going to get in there before Morkar takes a little bit too much damage. So Bounce of Power is starting to shift in my opponent's favor here. Just absolute insanity. I think these Raiders were over pursuing because I had them targeting my Reavers, but this really sucked. My opponent did a really good job. He got the Reavers and he chased off my Caster. So a very veteran play there for my opponent, because that Deathcaster still can make a pretty big difference, but now it's pretty much gone. Dragon Princes in the back are kind of sweeping through, going after my throwing axes, and I am out of ammunition, but I think I end up charging in anyways because of just pure numbers, and these guys are so low. They're all like, sub 800 HP. The Raiders are shooting in, trying to pick them off. It looks like Alariel the Pigeon Lord is going after Morkar, and he's broken. So now the Bounce Power heavily in my opponent's favor. It is looking very, very grim. Even though I have some Centaurs left, my backline's about to be compromised. The Spearmen are going to be chasing out my Raiders. My other group just getting ransacked right here by these Dragon Princes, which is going to be really tough. And on top of that, the Pigeon Lady is still chasing Morkar, and you can see she could potentially chase him off the battlefield. Go ahead and look here. Yeah, she's pretty much full health. Morkar is regenerating, so he's sustaining some of that damage. But the Centaurs, who actually just broke off those Dragon Princes, so you guys saw the Dragon Princes were able to kind of push my archers back, but these Centaurs, that's what's really cool about the Throwing Axe variant, or pretty much Centaurs in general, is they have pretty good combat stats, even for the kind of ranged variant. And they're going to be able to chase down the Pigeon Lady, so they actually catch her. Now she has to make a choice. Does she stay and try and, fight through and maybe finish off Morkar, but Orker is just so tough to finish off. That regeneration making a huge difference. I mean, just imagine if it were like Kazrak, for example. Kazrak would just be, he would probably already be off the battlefield. His chariot would have carried him there faster. But Orker is able to slip away, which is really good. The high mass of the Centaurs pinning her down, and you know, she's okay in melee, 390 weapon strength, pretty good melee defense at 55, but she's not like a big terror-causing monster. So the Centaurs are going to be able to stay and surround and do some pretty good work, but man, this is what's going to be really tough, these spearmen. So there's still a ton of spearmen here, just kind of pushing back towards their lord. Looks like there's some sort of an Earthblood going off. I think he cast it on, or maybe an Arcane Conduit or something. Arcane Conduit, I guess. But Morker is back. This is going to be huge. Bounce power is massively in my opponent's favor right now, so there's going to be some heavy lifting we need to do to get back. So at this point, I'm like, okay, let's go ahead and get Morker. Go ahead and fast forward as things kind of get going here. Let's go ahead and get Morker back with his units. Let's unify, see if we can rally any forces. And in the meantime, just use our raiders to kind of pick apart these spearmen, because if they're marching away and you're shooting at their backs, your shields aren't really going to help them. But regardless, the shields, we don't care right now. We're going to be shooting in. The Pigeon Lady coming over here to kind of take apart my archers. Probably should have gone out after this group since it has more ammunition, but we are able to get that group down. The Centaur is able to outmaneuver the Spearmen, and right now we're just going to try and get the Pigeon Lady. As far as rallying troops go, I do have these Ungor Spearmen herds, 43 models right here, which could, you know, anything's helpful at this point. I'm taking it. I'm not going to be picky, but the Centaurs are just going to be chasing the Pigeon Lady, trying to catch her, but she gets away. So at this point, we're just going to be cycle charging the Spearmen. So trying to catch them. The weaker versions, number one, because they're going to break quickly just because of how beat up they are. But number two, when they start to move and chase, we can then charge them. They'll lose their charge bonus and essentially most of their defensive benefits there, and we can take them apart. Some of these spearmen do grab this group of spearmen here. Morker continuing to try and get back to his forces. I just wanted to get him with his spearmen and his other allies here so he could keep fighting. Morker is going to, he's going to be healing. So that bounce of power may creep back up as he heals. We get a charge in there. I thought about it, but it was a little bit risky, I felt, because those spearmen are so healthy. So you can see just using the raiders, forcing my opponent to come out here. Now this group is moving, so we get a good charge. They're not braced for that. It looks like they kind of braced at the last second. Maybe my opponent got that off, but we take a couple casualties, but I felt like the damage was pretty good. Morker is in here with his Pimp Claw, and we do also get the Ungor Raiders back, so there's 41 of those guys. Centaur is going to be chasing off the Pigeon Lady, so she retreats, but coming back in for another charge against these unbraced spearmen. So hopefully Morker can just tank these guys, and in the meantime take advantage of the Centaurs and their charge bonus to potentially finish them off. But we cannot stay in combat long, because these spearmen do very well against the lightly armored Centaurs who only have 35 armor. But the Raiders are coming back as well. Looks like this group of Raiders who has 2 volleys left, so about 2 volleys worth of ammunition. But we charge in. Very, very close fight. Bounce power creeping back towards the middle. And it looks like a fat Earthblood's going to go off. So man, that was really tough. As soon as the Earthblood goes, you can see the bounce power actually going down for me, which is, I'm like, no, it's slipping away. But the Centaurs charging back in there, getting another charge from these spearmen, trying to break their leadership. Their martial prowess is now gone. Morker is just being the people's champion, just tanking and fighting, just tooth and nail in here. And it looks like a lot of the High Elf forces are getting a little bit rattled here. So the Centaur is just beastly. Their charge bonus, even on the throwing axe variant, really good. And we're able to kind of smash up those spearmen. So you can see all of a sudden, all of the High Elf forces are scattered. Balance of power is still massively in my opponent's favor, but Alariel isn't a world beater. She's not going to be able to win this fight and sustain combat. So even though the balance is in my opponent's favor, it's looking really good for me. So at this point, I get a full surround on Alariel. I get one group of Centaurs, and I start chasing down the scraps so they can't come back and help her. And she's definitely not going to be able to outdo Morker with his healing and his poison. You can see she's trying to fight, but Morker with his Pimp Claw, it's kind of like a Forsaken Claw. Yeah, he's slapping that pigeon, doing a pretty good job. And now you can see she's actually wavering. So for the first time in a long time, bounce power comes back in my favor. I can't believe it. We were able to actually pull that one out. Alariel's going to get taken down by the Raiders and the Centaurs and Morker, and that is going to be all she wrote. And as far as the army breakdown goes, you can certainly see that the Centaurs with throwing axes undoubtedly the MVPs. 105 kills, 93 kills. And pretty much for most of the game, they were either targeting the Dragon Princes, so I would assume at least like 20 or 30 of those kills are on Dragon Princes respectively. And on top of that, the cycle charging from them at the end with Morker kind of holding the line was just incredible. If Morker had also been chased off or had been killed, there was no way I could have won, because these spears could have just stood still and I would have had to charge in, and, you know, unless I'm not going to draw kite, obviously, I would have had to charge in and I would have met my end with that charge defense. But they were fighting Morker, they were engaged, which means their charge defense isn't really coming into effect. So the Centaurs with like, what do they have, like 30 weapon strength or something, and a charge bonus that's relatively respectable, even on the throwing axes. I mean, man, really, really good stuff from those guys. My front line did okay. They didn't have much to fight. I mean, they kind of just got swiggity-swooted here by these Dragon Princes, and I really thought it was over. When my opponent came in with those Princes, I was like, oh man, I don't have enough to handle all this. And yeah, they did really good, especially with Alariel. Anytime you want to use Dragon Princes, just bring her, and like bring 2 groups. You're going to get a ton of value out of those Stars of Averlorn. Thankfully, we were able to melt the Fireborn really quickly. They came in, we targeted them with all 3 groups and our Raiders, just put all of our firepower and magic into those guys. We were able to take them out, which was pretty cool. But man, what a game. So very well played to my opponent. Shebek MP, look forward to running into you again on the ladder, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this Beastmen vs. High Elf game. Have an excellent night, guys, and take care.